My name is Mara Callahan. I'm 29 years old. 6 weeks after my father's funeral, my mother didn't pull me aside. She didn't lower her voice or wait for a private moment. She slid a manila folder across the kitchen table. My father's kitchen table, the one he built himself from reclaimed oak, and said, right in front of my brother Garrett and his wife Tessa and my Aunt Norma, who had driven 4 hours from Raleigh. Your father wanted Marcus to have the house. You know how he felt about keeping property in the family name? I looked at the folder. Then I looked at her. Dad's name was Callahan, I said. That's my name too. She smiled the way she always smiles when she thinks she's already won. You know what I mean, Mara. I did know what she meant. I'd known for 3 weeks since the night I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Walgreens and Googled North Carolina one-party consent recording law on my phone with shaking hands. The answer came back clean. One party. Just me. I didn't need anyone's permission. I reached into my cardigan pocket and pressed record. The phone was already warm from being in my hand for the last 40 minutes. Okay, I said. Show me what he signed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My father, Robert Callahan, died on March 3, 2024. Cardiac event, the doctor called it. He was 61. He'd been having chest pain for 2 weeks and didn't tell anyone except the dog. He died on a Sunday morning. My brother Marcus called me at 6:47 a.m. Dad's gone, he said, and then he said nothing else, just breathed into the phone while I sat up in my apartment in Durham and tried to remember how to be a person. I drove to the house in Greensboro. It took me an hour and 40 minutes. I ran 2 red lights. I don't remember doing it. The house was a 4-bedroom colonial on Elmwood Drive that my parents bought in 1998 for $187,000 and is now worth somewhere around $40,000. Dad had paid it off completely in 1919. He told me over the phone the day he made the last payment, and I could hear him crying a little. The quiet kind of crying he did when he was proud of something and didn't want to make a big deal of it. Free and clear, he said. First one in my family to own something outright. First one, I said. Don't let anyone take that from you, he said. I thought he was talking about himself. My mother's name is Beverly. She and my father had a complicated marriage. That's the diplomatic version. The longer version is that she managed money the way some people manage relationships, by controlling every dollar and resenting everyone who asked questions. Dad worked construction for 30 years. She worked part-time at a dental office and considered herself the financial mind of the family because she balanced the checkbook. Marcus is 6 years older than me. He sells insurance in Greensboro and lives 12 minutes from my parents' house and has always been, in the unspoken language of our family, the one who mattered more. I moved away at 22 for grad school and then stayed away because staying away felt like breathing. The will reading was April 4th, a Thursday. The attorney was a man named Gerald Finch, older, tired-looking, out of an office on Battleground Avenue. My mother sat across the table from me with her hands folded. Marcus sat next to her. His wife Tessa sat next to her. His wife Tessa sat next to him. I sat alone on my side. The will left the house to me and Marcus equally. 50-50. Everything else, the accounts, the truck, the tools, split the same way. My mother's face when Gerald Finch read that line was something I had not seen before. Not grief. Calculation. On the drive home, she called me. I was still in the parking deck. Gerald made an error, she said. He read the will, Mom. Your father updated his wishes verbally. I was there. He said he wanted Marcus to have the house because Marcus has children and you don't. Dad didn't have grandchildren when he wrote the will. Things changed, Mara. I sat in the parking deck for 20 minutes after I hung up. Then I drove to a coffee shop, ordered something I didn't drink, and opened my phone. I started reading about estate law in North Carolina. I read for 2 hours. Then I found the recording statute and saved the page. That night I called my friend Jonah. We'd worked together at a nonprofit before I switched to healthcare administration. He was the kind of person who knew things about things. Digital security, document preservation, how systems actually worked. I need help, I said. What's going on? My mother is going to try to take my half of my father's house. I don't have proof yet, but I know it's coming, and when it comes, I need to be ready. He was quiet for a second. How long do you think you have? Weeks. Maybe less. Okay. I could hear him already thinking. Let's set up cloud backup, auto-upload, encrypted, and we need a deadman switch. If you can't access your accounts for 48 hours, the files go to 2 people. You and my attorney. You have an attorney? I will by Monday. I found one that Monday. Her name was Patricia Webb, estate and probate law, office in Chapel Hill. Her assistant put me on the schedule for the following week. I started recording on April 9th. It wasn't anything dramatic at first. My mother called every 2 or 3 days, always circling the same subject. She never said, "Take your name off the deed." She said things like, "Your father would have wanted peace in this family, and Marcus needs stability, Mara. He has 2 kids. And you're young, you can start over anywhere, Marcus can't." I let her talk. I said things like, "I hear you and I understand, and let me think about it." I kept my voice flat and agreeable. She had no idea. April 14th was the first recording that actually mattered. I was back in Greensboro helping sort through some of Dad's things. Tools in the garage, boxes in the basement. My mother was in the kitchen. I was upstairs. The house is old and the vents carry sound the way old houses do, which I had known since I was 8 years old and used to listen to my parents argue about money at midnight. She was on the phone with Marcus. "She's not going to push back?" I heard her say. "She never does. She just needs to feel like her feelings are being considered." Pause. "No, I'm not worried about the attorney. We just need to get her to sign the property transfer before she talks to anyone. Once the deed changes, it's done." Pause. "I know what Gerald said. Gerald read the will. This isn't about the will." I stood very still at the top of the stairs. My hand was in my pocket. My phone was recording. I went back downstairs 20 minutes later and helped her fold a box of Dad's flannels for Goodwill. She made us both tea. She talked about the garden. I drove home with recording number 1 saved, uploaded, backed up. April 17th, Patricia Webb's office, Chapel Hill. I sat across from her and said, "Can I just play you something first?" She said yes. I played her 4 minutes of the April 14th call. When it ended, she looked at me over her reading glasses. "How many more do you have?" "1 so far, but I think there will be more." "Keep going," she said. "What your mother is describing is torious interference with an inheritance. It's a civil claim, and if she fabricates any documentation to support a transfer, we're looking at fraud." She mentioned getting me to sign a property transfer. "Do not sign anything," Patricia said. "Nothing. Not for insurance, not for estate management, not for anything. Call me first." "What if they escalate?" She leaned back. "They will escalate. People like this always do when they realize the soft approach isn't working. When they escalate, they get sloppy. And when they get sloppy, they make your case for you." I drove home and added Patricia's cell to my contacts. Then I texted Jonah, 1 recording so far. "She's planning something with a property transfer." He replied, "Keep going, you're doing the right thing." April 22nd. My mother invited me to lunch at a restaurant on Friendly Avenue, a place my father liked, which I think was intentional. She brought Aunt Norma. I arrived 5 minutes early. Started recording in the parking lot. Over salads and iced tea, Norma said, gently, carefully, like she rehearsed it, "Mara, honey, we all just think it would be easier if Marcus had the house. You're not here. You don't have to manage it from a distance. He's right there." "I could sell my half," I said. "Or rent my half," I said. "There are options." "Selling complicates things," my mother said. "Marcus can't buy you out right now. He just refinanced his car. Then we keep the co-ownership arrangement and hire a property manager." She set her fork down. "Your father did not want strangers managing his house." "What did Dad want, Mom? Because the will is pretty clear." Her jaw tightened. Just for a second. Then she smiled again. "He wanted peace. He wanted his family to take care of each other." I nodded. I said I'd think about it. Recording number 2. 14 minutes. Saved. May 1st, my mother called at 8:30 in the morning. I answered because I always answer. She said she'd found a document among my father's papers, a handwritten note, she said, expressing his wish that Marcus have the house. I'd like to see it, I said. I'll bring it Sunday. I was thinking we could all have dinner. I called Patricia immediately after I hung up. A handwritten note appearing 6 weeks after the will reading is not legally binding in North Carolina, she said, but she might try to use it as leverage to get you to voluntarily sign over your interest. Don't go to that dinner alone. I have to go. If I don't, she'll use it against me later. Then go, record everything. And Mara, look at the document carefully. Date, handwriting, pen color, paper condition. Take a photo the moment you see it. I showed up that Sunday, May 5th, with my phone recording from the moment I parked on Elmwood Drive. My mother had made pot roast, Dad's recipe or close to it. Marcus and Tessa were already there. So was Aunt Norma. My cousin Bethany showed up at 5:45, which surprised me. I hadn't known she was invited, and she and I barely spoke. We ate. It was almost normal. Marcus talked about his older kid's baseball team. Tessa asked about my job. My mother refilled water glasses and smiled at everyone and seemed, to a stranger, like a perfectly reasonable woman hosting a family dinner. At 6:20, after the plates were cleared, she placed the folder on the table. I found this in your father's desk, she said, in the locked drawer. I had to get a locksmith. I looked at the paper inside, handwritten on what appeared to be plain white printer paper. My father's name at the top, the date listed as January 12th, 2024, 7 weeks before he died. I want Marcus to have the house, the note read. He has a family to raise. Mara will be fine. She always is. I photographed it immediately. My mother noticed. You don't trust me, she said. I just want a copy. Marcus leaned forward. Mara, come on. You know this is what Dad wanted. He told me the same thing. When? I asked. He hesitated. Over the years. Different times. Did he put anything in writing before this? I asked. Besides the will he signed with an attorney in 2021? Norma shifted in her chair. Bethany looked at the table. My mother's voice dropped, not quieter exactly, but lower in a way that meant she was done being gentle. You've always been selfish, even as a child. Your father gave you everything and you moved away and left us with nothing, and now you want to take from your brother too. I don't want to take anything, I said. I want what Dad left me. He left you what he had to, she said. This, she touched the folder, is what he actually wanted. I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at the note again. The paper was too white. The fold lines were sharp and even, like it had been folded once recently, not kept in a locked drawer for months. My father's handwriting was slanted left. This slanted right. Okay, I said. I need to talk to my attorney before I sign anything. She exhaled. Of course you do. Recording number 3. 41 minutes. Every word. I sent the photo of the note to Patricia that night with the message, he was left-handed. This is written right-handed. She replied at 10:47 p.m. Saving this. Do not lose that photo. May 8th. A forensic handwriting analyst named Dr. Tunat, Carol Steele, recommended by Patricia, reviewed the photo and a scan of my father's signature from the 2021 will. Her preliminary finding, delivered by email on May 13th, the handwriting samples exhibit significant inconsistencies in stroke direction, letter formation, and baseline angle. The sample provided as Exhibit B, the note, does not match the established handwriting of the named individual. I cannot authenticate this document. Patricia forwarded it to me with 2 words. There it is. May 15th. Marcus showed up at my apartment in Durham uninvited. I heard his car pull up and had my phone recording before I opened the door. He stood in my doorway in a polo shirt looking like he hadn't slept well. I just want to talk, he said. Come in. We sat at my kitchen table. He was quiet for a moment, which wasn't like him. Then he said, Mom went too far with the note, didn't she? I didn't answer. I didn't write it, he said. I want you to know that. I didn't know she was going to do that. But you knew she was going to do that. But you knew she was planning something. He looked at his hands. She told me she was going to handle it. I didn't ask what that meant. That's a choice, Marcus. I know. He was quiet again. I have 2 kids, Mara. The house would have. I know about your kids. I'm their aunt. But Dad didn't leave the house to your kids. I'm their aunt. But Dad didn't leave the house to your kids. He left it to both of us. He left 20 minutes later. I sat at my table after his car pulled away and just breathed. Recording number 4. 22 minutes. Including the part where he said, "I didn't know she was going to do that." May 19th. My mother filed a petition in Guilford County Probate Court to contest the will on the grounds that my father lacked testamentary capacity at the time of signing due to early cognitive decline. She attached a sworn affidavit listing 3 incidents. January 2024, Robert Callahan forgot a scheduled doctor's appointment and became confused when called about it. February 2024, Robert Callahan repeated himself during a phone conversation and could not recall what he'd said moments earlier. February 2024, Robert Callahan expressed to Beverly Callahan that he was not sure anymore about his estate plans. I read the affidavit twice. Then I called Patricia. "She's claiming he had cognitive decline," I said. "We'll need his medical records," Patricia said, "and his doctor. He went to the same GP for 15 years, Dr. Hammond in Greensboro. I'll reach out." But Mara, get ahead of this. Do you have anyone who interacted with your father regularly in the last year, who can speak to his mental state? I made a list that night. His foreman at the job site where he consulted part-time. His neighbor Harold, who'd played cards with him twice a month for 11 years. His friend Dennis from church. The woman at the hardware store on Holden Road who'd known him for a decade. I called all 4 the next morning. Every single one said the same thing in different words. He was sharp. He was funny. He was himself right up until the end. Harold said, "Robert beat me at gin rummy 3 weeks before he died. He remembered every card I'd played." You telling me that man had cognitive decline? Dr. Tullen. Hammond's office called Patricia on May 22nd. His record showed no diagnosis, no documentation, no clinical observation of cognitive impairment. His last checkup was February 1st, 2024, 1 month before he died. The notes read, "Patient in good health, alert and oriented. Discussed preventive cardiology, cholesterol management ongoing." Patricia called me that afternoon. "The affidavit is perjury," she said. "Every single claim is fabricated or grossly mischaracterized, and we can prove it." May 28th, certified letter from Patricia's office to my mother's attorney. Attached Dr. Hammond's records. Attached preliminary handwriting analysis of the note. Attached transcription excerpts from recordings dated April 14th and May 5th, legally obtained under NC General Statute 15A 287, one-party consent. Attached sworn statements from Harold Briggs, Dennis Parr, Thomas Griggs, and Sandra Moore, each attesting to Robert Callahan's mental acuity in the months before his death. The letter ended, "Your client's affidavit contains material falsehoods. We are prepared to pursue sanctions, fraud referrals, and counterclaims in full if this petition is not voluntarily withdrawn within 10 business days." I didn't hear from my mother for 9 days. On day 10, her attorney called Patricia. They wanted to talk. Mediation was set for June 18th, 2024. A conference room at a neutral attorney's office on Elm Street in Greensboro. Lawn table. Too many chairs, bad coffee. My mother sat across from me for the first time since the dinner in May. She looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I just saw her differently now. The mediator, a retired judge named Sandra Elkins, opened by reviewing the record. She noted the handwriting analysis. She noted the medical records. She noted the recordings. She looked at my mother's attorney. "Your client filed a sworn affidavit making specific claims about the decedent's cognitive state. Those claims are directly contradicted by the treating physician's records and by 4 sworn community witnesses. Before we go further, I need to understand how your client intends to support those claims." My mother's attorney conferred in whispers with her for a moment. Then he said, "My client is prepared to withdraw the petition." "We're not done," Patricia said. She opened her laptop. She turned the speaker toward the center of the table. She played the April 14th recording. My mother's voice clear and flat. "She's not going to push back. She never does. She just needs to feel like her feelings are being considered. And then, we just need to get her to sign the property transfer before she talks to anyone. Once the deed changes, it's done." The room was very quiet. Sandra Elkins looked at my mother. "Is that your voice, Ms. Callahan?" My mother said nothing. Patricia played 40 seconds of the May 5th dinner recording. My mother's voice again. "You've always been selfish, even as a child. And he left you what he had to. This is what he actually wanted." More quiet. Then Patricia said, "We also have preliminary findings from a forensic document examiner indicating that the handwritten note presented as Exhibit A at the May 5th dinner does not match the decedent's established handwriting. We are prepared to file a formal fraud complaint with the North Carolina State Bar regarding the note's submission as evidence." My mother's attorney put his pen down. He turned to her and spoke quietly. She shook her head once. He spoke again. She looked at the table. Judge Elkins called a 15-minute recess. In the hallway, Patricia put her hand on my arm. "She's going to fold." "I know," I said. Through the glass panel in the door, I could see my mother sitting alone at the table. Her attorney had stepped out. She was looking at her hands. I thought about my father building that table from reclaimed oak. I thought about him crying on the phone the day he paid off the house. Free and clear. First one in my family. 15 minutes passed. We went back in. My mother's attorney stood. "Ms. Massemeli, Callahan withdraws the probate petition in its entirety. She also agrees to relinquish any claim to the physical document presented at the May 5th meeting, which will be surrendered to Ms. Callahan's counsel." Judge Elkins nodded. "So noted." "Ms. Nuckins. Webb, does your client have additional requests?" Patricia looked at me. "I want a no-contact order," I said. "Any attempt by Beverly Callahan or Marcus Callahan to contact me, my attorney, my employer, or anyone in my professional network, regarding the estate or otherwise, will result in immediate filing of civil fraud claims and referral to the Guilford County DA for perjury review." The order was drafted that afternoon and signed by both parties. Outside, in the June heat of the parking lot, Jonah was waiting. He'd driven from Raleigh. He hadn't told me he was coming. "How'd it go?" he asked. "She folded." He exhaled. "Good." We stood there for a minute in the sun. I didn't cry. I'd expected to, and I didn't. I just felt tired in a way that was different from the tired I'd felt for the past 3 months. A releasing kind of tired. Marcus called me that evening. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything," he said. "But I want you to know I'm sorry, not just for the last few months. For longer than that, I let her run things my whole life, and I told myself it was easier, and I never thought about who it cost." He paused. "Dad would be ashamed of me. I know that. I'm sorry, Mara." I listened to it twice. Saved it. Didn't reply. I drove back to Durham that evening with the windows down. I stopped at a diner outside Burlington and ate a real meal for the first time in, I didn't know how long, eggs and toast and orange juice, and sat in a vinyl booth while the sun went down and thought about my father's handwriting. The way it always slanted left because he was left-handed and proud of it and never tried to write any other way. There's something they don't tell you about grief. It doesn't pause for the other things. The whole time I was recording and filing and meeting with Patricia, I was also just missing him. Separately. At the same time. Some mornings I'd wake up and think I should call Dad and then remember, and the legal strategy would feel very far away and very small. He deserved better than what came after him. July brought practical things. Patricia filed the necessary paperwork to clear the probate record. The handwritten note was formally surrendered and retained as evidence. The house remained in both names, mine and Marcus's, per the original will. In August, Marcus called again, a different kind of call. "I've been in therapy," he said. "I started in July." "Okay," I said. "I'm not asking for anything. I just thought you should know. Thank you for telling me." Silence. "Dad used to say you were the tough one," Marcus said. He said it like it was a compliment. I think I used to hear it like it wasn't. I didn't say anything. "I'm gonna keep going," he said, "to therapy." I wanted you to know. Keep going, I said. Call me in 3 months. By September, the house was listed with the real estate agent we both agreed on. We'd both decided independently, without talking about it, that neither of us wanted to own it the way things stood, and that splitting the proceeds was cleaner than co-managing a property from 2 different cities with a year like this between us. It sold in October for $448,000. After agent fees and the remaining estate costs, my share came to just under $210,000. I deposited it into an account my mother's name had never been near. I used part of it to pay off my student loans. I used part of it to put a down payment on a small house in Durham, a 1960s ranch on a quiet street with a big backyard and hardwood floors and a kitchen that gets light in the morning. The first night I slept there, I lay on the floor because I didn't have a bed frame yet, just a mattress, and I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the things my father built with his hands and how this was the thing I was building with mine. And I talked to him a little in the dark, the way I've been doing since March, and I said, I kept it. Your work. Your name. I kept it. November. Marcus called on the 3-month mark. He'd been going to therapy every week. He had things to say that were clearly things he'd been working on. Not a script, but practiced. Honest in the way things are honest when someone has been forced to actually look at them. We had coffee on a Saturday morning, a neutral place, a coffee shop on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. We sat for an hour and a half. It wasn't warm, not yet, but it was something. At the end he said, is there a version of this where we're okay again? I don't know, I said, but there's a version where we try. He nodded. I drove home in the November light, bare trees and the last of the yellow leaves, and I thought about the fact that none of this had to happen. That a man worked for 30 years and died and tried to leave something for his children, and the person who should have protected that tried to take it instead. But here's what else is true. I was in that house for 40 years as the quiet one, the one who moved away, the one who would be fine. And I found out what I was made of. Not because someone handed it to me, because they made me fight for it. I pressed record in a parking lot on a Tuesday night in April. That was the only weapon I needed. My father built things that lasted. I learned from him. Some of what he built was wood and steel and concrete. Some of it was me. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in that mediation room on Elm Street. Not the legal part, the human part. My mother sat across a conference table and heard her own voice played back to her, and she couldn't say a word. Not because the recording was damning, though it was, but because she had spent so many years operating in a world where no one wrote anything down, where conversations disappeared, where the quiet ones stayed quiet. She built her whole strategy on the assumption that I would do what I had always done. That's the part that stays with me. She wasn't wrong about my history. I had moved away. I had stayed out of things. I had let 100 smaller moments pass without pushing back, because pushing back felt like too much, like more than I had in me. She looked at 26 years of evidence and drew a reasonable conclusion. The problem is that people change when the cost of staying the same becomes unbearable. My father died, that changed the cost. There's something I understand now that I didn't understand before any of this. Integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you're alone in a parking lot at 9 p.m. with a sick feeling in your stomach and a choice in front of you. I could have told myself it was too hard, that she was my mother, that maybe she was right about what Dad would have wanted, that the house wasn't worth the fight. Every single one of those things would have been easier to believe. I chose not to believe them because I knew, not hoped, knew, that my father had left that will for a reason, and that reason was his to give. That's what this was really about. Not $210,000. Not a house on Elmwood Drive. It was about whether his choices would be honored after he was gone. He spent 30 years building something, and he decided who it went to. The people he trusted most tried to unmake that decision because they thought they could. They thought I wouldn't notice, or wouldn't fight, or would eventually get tired. What they didn't account for was that I had learned something from watching him. He showed up. Every single day, job sites in August, heat in January, cold, for 30 years. He didn't do it because it was easy. He did it because it was his. That's what integrity looks like when it's not a word in a speech. It's just someone showing up again tomorrow. I pressed record not because I was clever, but because I knew it was true and I needed to be able to prove it. That's the part I want anyone who hears this story to hold on to. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be aggressive. You just have to be precise. Know what you know. Document it. Find the people who know the law. Do the next thing. My mother made her choices. They compounded, the way choices do, until they became something she couldn't walk back from in a room full of witnesses. That's not luck or fate. That's just what happens when someone builds a plan on a foundation of things that aren't true. I sleep in my own house now. The kitchen gets light in the morning. The floors are the same hardwood that was in the house where I grew up. I didn't plan that, but I noticed it. Dad would have noticed it too.